And welcome back, everyone, to another edition of Going for Two, presented by our good friends at Home Field Apparel. I am your host. I'm the publisher of the Extra Points newsletter. My name is Matt Brown. I'm joined by my colleague, Bryan Fischer. After one of the craziest, most exciting college football Saturdays, certainly not of just this season, but probably the last several seasons. Bryan, I don't know about you. I don't think it's just because I'm freezing and because I've been fighting off a touch of the crud. I'm still struggling to get back all of my voice, and I didn't even go to any of those games. There was a lot of yelling in Casa de Brown. I mean, you were on site for a couple of these things there. Are you able to talk?
Yeah, no, I'm not it's quiet in the press box. Let me tell you, I was at the USC Utah game where there's one of the upsets this weekend. A fun game. It kind of looked like USC was going to run away with it very early on, and then lo and behold, Utah comes back and wins it on a 2-point conversion and then a defensive stop. So some wild things, some definitely Pac-12 ref moments in that game as well. But it was fun being in the press box. I made it a point to kind of get there in time to watch the end of Alabama, Tennessee, and boy howdy was I lucky to do that, because that was a fun one. That was quite the scene there in Knoxville.
I don't usually watch snap to snap an entire game. I'm usually kind of skipping around a little bit. As as an example, I started in the evening shift with the USC Utah game and turned it off into the midway through the second quarter. I came back in the fourth, but at the beginning I was like, it looks like USC is just going to kick Utah's ass. Their offense is playing on another level. Utah can't really run the ball very well. Okay, we'll still have to do other things. Tennessee, Alabama was there snap to snap. And which, perfect for somebody that didn't have a rooting interest in it. It was a delightful football game. It was delightful because it was stupid in the way that you had weird, unforced errors and uncharacteristic sloppiness from Alabama, although that's, I guess, kind of characteristic this year. You had a couple holy crap plays. You had catharsis for a tormented fan base. All kinds of emotion. It was great. That is a game that I don't do this very often, but if it was replaying on Wednesday evening on the SEC network or something, or during the day when I'm working, I'd watch it again, or I'd speed it up a little bit. It's funny. I am not going to be able to sit here and say okay, Tennessee's now going to win the national championship. I don't know, maybe. What do I know? But it has been funny that the kind of feels like 98 thing has been a meme with Tennessee Twitter, just like Texas is back is a meme with everybody else as a Twitter account that follows college football. But my evil doppelganger, well, not my evil doppelganger, my doppelganger, the other Matt Brown, shared something that I thought it was worth talking about here for a minute. I have the top 25 from the end of the 1998 season pulled up here. Were you old enough? You were watching college football. Do you remember
the end though? Or are you talking about the end of the 98 season? Because I mean, that was definitely a fun time to be a college football fan. It seems like of all the seasons, there was a whole lot that went into that one. But I'll let you continue there.
Well, I have the end, and I have maybe the less end. I have it week by week pulled up, and this is probably the first season that I intimately remember many of the details. I was born in 87. I remember a couple of games from 96 and 97. I watched them. But this was the first year that I think I remember being a fan. And of course, Tennessee wins, finishes number one here. That's not the only similarity though between what the polls near the end of the season looked like. I'm pulling this up here, looking at it for late October from where we are now. And do you know who else would have been undefeated in 98 that is undefeated now, but usually isn't?
Now I'm completely thrown for. I guess UCLA would be the one answer that I would have is yeah. So I think who's the quarterback for that team? I was not a purveyor of West Coast football back in those days, being from Texas. Although it was fun to watch. I did go to a couple of Texas A&M games, including the one where Ricky Williams basically won the Heisman Trophy there as well at the end of the year. So that was a fun time. But yeah,
Drew Bennett, if Wikipedia serves me right, and Bob Toledo was your UCLA head coach. Yep. The Bruins were undefeated around this time, around 98. They were actually number 2, just ahead of Tennessee, and of course. My Ohio State Buckeyes. This was John Cooper's best team, the one that actually did beat Michigan and would have won it all if it wasn't for the fact that they had to play Nick Saban later in the year. We don't have to talk about that. That deeply traumatic.
Well, and then, again, this 98 team of because this is what really sticks out in my mind was because of the hurricane that hit Miami that year. They were going to play Miami at the beginning of the year, and then they had it moved towards the end of the year, and they ended up playing them in December, and that was the Bruins' lone loss. So that actually sent them to the Rose Bowl. That was the last time they made the Rose Bowl back in '98. Was this team, and then yeah, I mean that was God. It just the memories come flowing back at some point.
So that so there's that one, but then you look through here, right? And Kansas State was in the top 5. Yeah, this is
well, Mike, that was a fun team, the Kansas State team.
It was super fun, right? They're good. Georgia is is still in the top 10. Tulane would finish this year. I think they finished undefeated, right?
Yep.
Like and
Rich Rodriguez was the OC of that team,
which is coordinator, the guy that badly wanted the job afterwards, right? Didn't end up getting it. And
here's a good Tulane question: do you remember who the AD for Tulane in '98 was?
The AD?
Yeah,
it wasn't Mac Brown, was it? No,
it was not Mac Brown.
Who I don't know who was it?
I believe that was Sandy Barber.
Oh, I didn't know Sandy Barber was at Tulane. Mac Brown was the AD at Tulane at one point, right? When he was also coaching football there.
Maybe. Let's look this up.
I was 11. Well, you're looking at a very, very scintillating podcasting radio.
Oh, right? Because Tommy Bowden was the coach.
I knew that.
Rich Rodriguez,
yeah. Syracuse was good. It's not a 1-to-1 thing here because, of course, Alabama is not ranked, and Texas A&M was really good. Nebraska was really good. Colorado was really good. Okay, you can't have everything, but the whole smells like 98 thing might have something to it. The one of the early years in a more modernizing college football. Some of the teams that really haven't been that good since are enjoying at least very strong beginnings of the season. Which makes this fun. Like this has been a weird year, I think, so far, in that the teams that are likely to compete for national championship, the teams that are in playoff contention at this point, are mostly the same teams that they always are. Clemson's still undefeated. We're going to have probably either Ohio State or Michigan. Alabama still has a great chance. Georgia's still very much in the mix, right? It's a similar configuration. You have Tennessee, which is new. You have USC, who is new. But Illinois is like awesome for Tulane.
A dark horse Heisman contender there with Illinois too.
I'm wearing an Illinois shirt here. Yeah, right now Tulane's great. Kansas State is great. Oklahoma is not great.
That might be the one thing that sticks out is Oklahoma is not great. Anytime we have the comparisons, although they won this past week, against Kansas, all the comparisons to the John Blake era can maybe tail off for another week or two with Oklahoma there.
And to kind of put a bow on how weird this has been so far, you could say with a straight face, Oklahoma struggling mightily, but beats Kansas, which is an important milestone for the program. You would think that would go without saying. It was still, it wasn't a bad game. Kansas is obviously hurt, but they're probably going to make a bowl game too. And they've been garbage we might have Indiana, Duke, and Kansas all in bowl games the same year. It is possible. This is still fun. I want to talk about something that happened off the field with the Tennessee-Alabama game real quick, because, we're recording this late on a Tuesday evening, and the news cycle has shifted a little bit away from what happened on the field. Brian's columns, I think, would be a better resource for redigesting that than anything I'm going to say here. But Brian, you watched the end of this here. What happened after Tennessee beat Alabama?
That would be one of 3 big-time field stormings and just a sea of orange descending upon Neyland, which was it was
hundreds of thousands of people. Bananas.
I don't think we've really gotten. I guess we've gotten one big house field storming, but like the 100,000 seat stadiums, we don't tend to get a whole heck of a lot of field stormings from those that are over the 100K mark. And obviously, Neyland, it's a special place, a unique place in college football, and to see all those Vols fans who are the pent up frustration, you could just kind of see coursing out of them from 15 years, of losing the third Saturday in October.
Yeah,
and it was quite the scene, and it was interesting too, because usually when a lot of the times with the new goalposts, which we're going to get into that's what you're referring to. I know that, but usually when you see that that the field storming is coming, you'll see the new goalposts. They'll start folding down. They'll have the automatic ones, for the newer stadiums. That was not the case there at Tennessee. They were hacksawing them off right there.
Honestly, I hadn't really considered what you were just talking about, but like I don't think I can remember that many Ohio State field stormings off the top of my head. Doesn't happen that often in Penn State. I assume, if Penn State beats Ohio State in Happy Valley, that there might be a field storm.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of 2016 if they stormed the field there. I know that was a night game, but memory escapes me on that one. But just in terms of their 100,000 seat stadiums, that typically those teams are doing pretty well, and you just do not end up getting the amount of upsets that you typically do.
But a good point. So of course, yes, the Tennessee fans stormed the field. You could see the smoke from all the cigars, going up. It's a beautiful visual. And then of course they tear down the goalpost. They take the fans take the goalpost to various bars. I want to say part of one of them is living in fraternity houses right now. And then they baptize the rest of it in the river, which is no small feat because these things are freaking heavy. Like you can see like this little like procession of people carrying this big old thing. Wonderful, right? And then the day after, you see an email from the University of Tennessee that says, hey, this was a beautiful moment. I'm paraphrasing here, right? Beautiful moment. Remember when you tore down the goalpost after beating Alabama? Turns out you need goalposts to play another game. Can you please help donate money to help pay for new goalposts? And the fundraising email set a goal of $150,000, a goal which I understand they have met comfortably as of this recording here on Tuesday. And the thing about that is, Brian, is I checked into this and I asked around. I talked to some people on the Tennessee beat, and I looked around to see other stories. This similar thing happened when Ole Miss beat Alabama and when a couple other big SEC upsets. Goalposts don't cost $150,000. Goalposts cost, with labor, with inflation, around $25,000. It's about 11 to 12, 13 K per goalpost. So that's a big inflation. Even if you add in the $100,000 fine, that's 150 is clearly too much. Furthermore, Tennessee already had a backup set of goalposts. I think most schools do, and especially if you're going up an opponent where you think you might have a chance, you might take preliminary precautions, right? So they didn't need that. And so here's the question, because I have some members in my family, like not my wife, but like other members of our family that have worked in fundraising before in other industries, and the industry people that I saw on Twitter and in college AD and other places were kind of split. Because on one hand, of course, you should try to fundraise off of a gigantic event like this, to ask Tennessee fans to donate, I don't know, what they score, 52 points to win the game. Donate $52 for every point you scored against Alabama. Wonderful. No one's going to complain about that. You of course should do that, right? And maybe the email was a joke. On the other hand, it's not totally honest. Like, you don't need the money to replace that. Forget the people tweeting Tennessee has an endowment of $11 gajillion. Like, who the fuck cares? Like that's as if that's a checking account that they can go withdraw. But they do have a really big athletic budget. They are making $55 million from TV, and they bought goalposts ahead of time. So I know you didn't need the money. Am I a humorless troll that's making too much of something that clearly doesn't matter, or is this a little bit in bad taste?
I think this is a creative way to fundraise. I mean, we see this all the time when there are the field storms, when there are the fines, you'll see a lot of schools, kind of put out, maybe not necessarily in this manner in terms of having the kind of GoFundMe type of way, but when they'll hit up donors like right after the fact. This is when development officers are getting paid the big bucks, is when they go after those big fishes and say, hey, we just got fined $50,000. Hey, do you mind contributing to this? And typically they will get a very receptive welcome and a nice check cut from some of their mega boosters. But I think in this case, it actually was kind of a cool thing for the athletic department to do, to kind of generate interest in terms of kind of your typical fans, the ones that are not contributing for $1,000 for a personal seat license or something like that. I think that more than anything is kind of what this GoFundMe campaign was designed to do, was kind of capture that euphoria of the fan base. I read their most requested donation, that amount, I guess, was 16, which is kind of the years since they last beat to Alabama. So like, you kind of understood that this was a thing that, for small amounts, for fans that were maybe in the stadium that, are not mega boosters or anything like that, get them contributing to the school. Now you have some data on them as well. You can kind of hit them back up. Maybe if there is a possible trip there to Atlanta down the road, if they end up beating Georgia in a couple of weeks. So I get it from an athletic department perspective, but yeah, I think it is kind of funny, just given the amount of inordinate sums that are already coming into a place like Tennessee. I know Danny White does not need 150K, but you know what? When you can raise it 150K in like 3 or 4 days, that shows up pretty nicely on the balance sheet at the end of the year.
I know that Tennessee has a very aggressive and ambitious facilities master plan, right? Whether that's big changes to the baseball and softball complexes and other renovations you wanted to do to the stadium. And of course, you have one of the most high dollar NIL operations out there. I will never criticize anybody for just raising money off that kind of thing. It's possible just because I am wired the way where I have to read all of these dumb FRS reports that I'm like, well, actually, it's possible the problem is me. So I'm glad you all got their money. I'm glad you all got to beat Alabama. I would prefer, me personally, you're a little bit more honest, but who cares what I think? The important thing is that they got the money. You know who will always tell the truth, though, about how much something actually costs? Our good friends at Home Field Apparel, of course, right? They're not going to tell you that they need money to take karate lessons to fight the ninjas that kidnapped their family. They're not going to be the ones to tell you that shirts actually cost $300 and spend the rest on markups to funnel to the secret Indiana NIL booster slush fund. At least not that I know of. They'll tell you that the shirt costs X amount of dollars and the comfortable sweatpants and the comfortable hoodie, and they're great shirts. Home Field makes extremely comfortable, unique shirts. I am wearing my Illinois shirt right now. I'm wearing it under a jacket because my basement office is not insulated quite as well as I thought it would, and it's a little bit chilly in Chicago this evening. Brian, I think you're wearing. Yeah, we got the strut of destiny.
It's basketball season. We just had the AP poll come out. I'm feeling the hoops love as well. I know it was a crazy day in college football, but goodness, I'm feeling like the basketball is also right around the corner. To be fair, though, I was totally looking to continue on our '98 theme for my Tulane shirt, but I guess it's in the wash right now because I did not end up seeing it, or else I would have worn it for the show to continue our '98 theme.
I'm looking up right now to see what St. Peter's record was in 1998, and we'll get to that here in a second when I finish the ad read because I want to focus on making sure everybody knows.
You can look that up because I'm just scrolling the whole Tennessee page of Home Field Apparel because that stuff is
riff on that.
Certainly legit. Back in the day when they first released it, but I believe they had a couple new updated designs. But who doesn't love a nice orange T-shirt with Smokey on it? Like especially when you can kind of get a discount on it using our promo code Extra Points and not 15% off that order. I mean, like who doesn't like Smokey the dog?
It's a good dog. It's a good dog.
And they even have the 98 undefeated national champs T-shirt. So let's continue with the party like it's 1998 here on the show.
In case you were wondering, which I'm sure you all were here, the 98 season was a little bit difficult for our friends, the St. Peter Peacocks. They finished dead last in the MAC that season with a 4-14 conference record and finished 8-19 on the year. Not Roger Blind's best season. Big year for a lot of other people, though. And the shirt still slaps because Peacocks is still a funny name. They're still a funny story, which is what Home Field specializes in. So when you go buy your stuff, whether you want to celebrate UCLA, Home Field School, Tennessee, Home Field School, Ohio State, Home Field School, or other people that were good at sports in 1998, use promo code Extra Points to save 15% off that order, so you can save a little bit of money. We've had a little bit of inflation since 98. So you want to, right. You want to be able to save that money. You can do that with that promo code. Get the most comfortable, the most unique, the coolest collegiate licensed apparel, and show all of the other dads just how cool you are with these great shirts. This is what I do to show dominance at the gym.
I like it. I'm trying to think. Now, speaking of the coach of the team right now, because he's now at Shaheen Holloway's now at Seton Hall. I saw him at Big East Media Days, which also took place this week for basketball. I'm trying to think what he was doing in '98. If he was actually on a team. I guess he was 2001 Seton Hall graduate, so he might
I don't
might
want to
have
think
just
about
gotten
this.
into
Yeah, I don't want to
he
think
might have
about
just
this too
gotten
much.
into school or a freshman. So that's
He's
that's
not
how,
that much older than us.
yeah.
I'm trying to, the national champion, of course, in the 97-98 season was Kentucky. Do you remember who the AP player of the year was that year?
Let's see, 97, 98.
Yeah. I can give you a hint. He played at North Carolina and had a very successful professional basketball career.
Successful basketball career.
Yeah, he was great. Played for my beloved Cleveland Cavaliers for a minute.
Antoine Jameson.
That's right. It was Antoine Jameson, your Final Four, Kentucky, UNC, Stanford. People forget that Stanford used to be good at sports that people watch, and Utah. Your preseason number one was Arizona. So thanks for tuning in to Let's Remember Some Guys from 1998. Our new podcast within a podcast here.
I feel like that is something that we're gonna have to expand our Friday shows. It's just we'll turn it into Remember This Year in. That's how we'll start doing our Friday shows.
Honestly, I think that's not a bad idea. I mean, like, you guys have seen the tweets about, like, men will just sit around and name random sports guys instead of going to therapy and just have the best time. But you know what? Sitting here thinking about Antoine Jameson, sitting there thinking about some of these very early college basketball seasons, I'm getting the serotonin pumping again.
If you are a listener and you want to just kind of hear us and potential guests riff on old teams and old years in college athletics, please let us know when we release this episode, and maybe we'll start doing that on Fridays.
Yeah, we'll pick a year. I am glad you mentioned, right, the college basketball. There's a lot of the other major media day events that are popping up. I thought, with Big East today, I thought Val Ackerman had some actually, like, interesting, important, insights to tease away that would be relevant, I think, to this particular audience. One of them that I saw was like, hey, we're not really actively looking at expanding at this moment. If we do, that might be something closer to when our television deal expires, just in a couple of years. But they confirm it. They had a few informal conversations. I don't think you need to be Wikipedia Brown to make an educated guess about who some of those schools might be, because there's only a handful of schools that either fit the current Big East footprint, your Daytons or your St. Louis's, or just happen to be elite basketball programs that share a Catholic identity, like a Gonzaga. Although we did learn that Gonzaga is, in fact, very far away from everybody else. And I thought what she was saying here about not necessarily completely embracing the idea of NCAA tournament expansion, but I think being a little bit more thoughtful about it. Like, I'm interested in studying it, but there are significant things we have to consider. And based on the public remarks from a few very important people, I think, in the college basketball world, I would not put many money on there being this thing expanding like 90 teams or something. If it's going up, I think it's going to be relatively manageable right now. If the Jim Phillips and the Val Ackermans and some of these mid-major leaders aren't pounding the table to move up to 90, I don't really know who is, right?
Well, I always thought 90 was a little bit of a stretch, just in terms of the current contract and everything that kind of goes on. Maybe that's something that we kind of explore more towards the 2030s, when those media rights deals come up. But I think more incremental, expansion of the tournament to where you're talking, probably in the 70s in terms of teams, just a few more teams. And I think that's probably going to be the case for a lot of these, sports, as we kind of talked about in the last couple of weeks on this podcast about, it might be a couple extra teams. And Greg Sankey has said some stuff on this on the record as well recently. So I think the commissioners and everybody are certainly laying the groundwork for this to end up happening and kind of probably being the big takeaway coming out of next week's meetings.
Speaking of expanding things and speaking of meetings, why don't you tell us a little bit about what's going on with those meetings? Because that's a world that you're much more connected in than I am.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think by the time this listen, we'll probably have about a week away from some big meetings from the NCAA. A lot of folks heading to Indianapolis for really in-person meetings to discuss a lot of the transformation committee concepts that are going to be coming out about changing nature of Division I. There will be a board meeting at the end of the month. I think that there's also some big stuff coming out of Dallas on Thursday with the CFP meeting as well. There's a big commissioners junket there. I think I want to say somebody said that they're planning for like 8 or 9 hours there by an airport hotel in DFW to meet and kind of go over college football playoff expansion. I think we're going to get some sort of announcement, knock on wood, in terms of kind of go, no go about some early playoff expansion. They're kind of working through a lot of the issues. We might not have every granular detail, but I think we might have an indication, at least, if this is going to be possible for, say, 2023 or 2024. So that big news, I think, coming on Thursday, and then even bigger kind of ground shaking news, maybe not ground shaking, but in terms of the impact, I guess, across the NCAA landscape will happen the week following. So very, very active weekend for stuff, and good for podcasts like ours.
Gun to your head right now, do you think that it is more likely that the college football playoff will expand earlier with ESPN than controlling all of the rights to that television inventory? Or do you think it'll wait till the end of the deal?
Well, that's going to be one of the key questions that needs to kind of be decided, and I think it's you kind of see some of the breadcrumbs. Jimmy Pitaro, the ESPN president, has kind of said, you know what, we're open to not only playoff expansion and being a willing partner, but even potentially sharing some of those semifinal games, potentially even including my other employer in Fox Sports would definitely be interested in a few of those college football playoff games, especially on campus, and some of the semifinals and whatnot. How that actually ends up shaking out, who knows? I think one of the big things that a lot of the commissioners are looking at, a lot of the ADs have expressed concern about, is just kind of the calendar and how it all kind of fits into the actual football calendar, when these games are going to be played. Ultimately, how you're going to kind of compete against the NFL in that time of year, when they are also playing on Saturdays in December. You already saw the announcement that happened on, I believe, Tuesday morning, regarding the NFL playing a Black Friday game. That's going to be streamed on Amazon. So that's another thing that college leaders are going to be kind of looking at. Part of the NCAA reforms as well has kind of been surrounding the calendar itself, and what changes might happen to, say, dead periods in football and recruiting and all that. So it all is kind of tied in together. And I keep saying it, I'm going to have to expand my timeline, but it kind of feels like there's so much change going on in the last 2 years. Well, it's going to continue. And this could be a really big month for a lot of topics, especially in college football playoff expansion and later in terms of the NCAA and everything going on there.
I've been surprised. The people that I talk to the most are generally not as wired in on this exact topic. But one thing that has come up that I wasn't really expecting was some actual pushback about the idea of doing all of these, at least the first round games, on campus. And it pushback that wasn't just from bowl executive type people. And I'm not saying that this isn't going to happen, but people saying, we're a little worried about hotel space. We're a little bit worried about some of the other things that we have going on campus, particularly if we have to play some of these playoff games during the week. So we don't compete with the NFL. Like we might have a first round playoff game on a Wednesday, potentially. Like what that does if class is still going on, or the disruption, particularly if that game is held in a place like State College, where logistics and being able to prepare for a huge event can be difficult. And I listen to this and think, yeah, but you already do that 7 times a year anyway. Like it's not like you're hosting the Olympics and having never done a big event before. And boy, there sure seems to be a lot of fan demand for this kind of thing, particularly. If that's such a hot ticket, you'd think the school would want it, because you can kind of lure that playoff game ticket to potential donors. So I don't know what this is going to look like when it's all said and done. I was personally a little surprised to hear more people than I was expecting, saying, maybe we don't do this on campus. And even if we're allowed to do it on campus, maybe we don't do it on campus. Maybe we go play somewhere an hour away that's in a dome, rather than play the home game in Wisconsin or something like these.
I've heard a little bit of that.
Yeah.
I think that when I talk with a couple ADs, they've kind of expressed, I guess maybe not concern, but more interest in what's your ticket allocation going to be like? Because typically when you do go to one of those dome games, you have a couple thousand seats, but are you going to get 80,000 or 80% of your ticket allocation like you kind of normally do? What's the visiting team going to get in terms of when they go into one of these venues? They're going to want to bring a whole bunch of fans as well. It's not going to be 50-50. Nobody expects that or even kind of wants that. You want to be rewarded to have that home game on campus, but what is the ultimate split going to be? Because you're going to have corporate partners that want to be going to a lot of these games. You're going to have kind of the CFP wanting to take a lot of the share, and just frankly talking with conference office staff and all that, who have to put on football games typically at short notice in terms of the championship games when they're home hosted. It's a big challenge. You got to have a plan basically for a lot of these teams. Now, do I expect, the CFP, in its current form, they've certainly run the title game. They understand how to pull off these games, but a lot of the time that they're leaning on local staff, in terms of, hey, we need this from the home host committee, and obviously a lot of these stadiums are NFL stadiums. They know how to do these events. The bowls, where the Fiesta Bowls, any of the semifinal bowls, they have a great working relationship, and they do most of the work, especially locally. Now that you're talking about actually home hosting on a lot of these sites, you're talking about not only expanding that CFP staff quite a bit there in Dallas, but they've got to have a lot of plans, a lot of campus site visits, with a lot of things ready to go, and a lot of it on short notice too, because just from the date regular season is going to conclude and those 12 teams are selected to the actual first round of games. It could be a little bit tough to pull off, and I think that's where some of the concerns are at least kind of being put out there. And I think you can overcome that a lot, but at the end of the day, yeah, I can totally understand why somebody's like, you know what, maybe we should talk about this a little bit. The other thing too is
Yeah.
related to that is not just your ticket split percentage or whatever, but like, how much money is going to be coming out of these games? What's that revenue
Yeah.
split going to be? If they expand in the current playoff contract. I was told that, I think the revenue percentages are going to stay the same. Yeah, the overall money is going to change, but the split right now is going to stay the same. That's a big deal if you're the Big Ten and you're the SEC. And you know what? You got a couple extra mouths to feed in this playoff scenario. So that's another thing that I think is going to get discussed quite a bit here on Thursday.
This is kind of one of the kind of elephants in the room, right? Like, I've talked about it on this show and talked about it in Extra Points before, and it's not a one-to-one thing, but like for the FCS playoffs, the dirty little secret is that most of those, the teams that host lose money on those events, even if they sell most of the tickets, because the NCAA takes most of it. And your ability to sell activations or to do sponsorship stuff or do anything else that would generate revenue there is not controlled by you. And in an event here, it's obviously it's not the NCAA that's going to be running it, it's college football playoff, but like, I think we've already heard that like the signage and the immediate like physical sponsorship stuff, that's not going to be school controlled. That's controlled by the college football playoff and distributed elsewhere. If they control most of the tickets and if they control most of the activations and if they control everything else here, that changes the calculus a little bit. And I mean, and not just how the money gets distributed among the various conferences or who actually makes the tournament or not, which is a gigantic question and one that kind of dovetails at least a little bit into what the transformation committee works on, because that helps shape the calculus of who moves up to FBS and who doesn't and what that looks like. Because right now we only have an outline and there's no guarantee that what the money that went to Conference USA exactly how will look like how it does in 2027. And if they don't make the playoff over a decade, we don't. Maybe it will be the same, but we don't completely know yet.
And then even the internal, schools are discussing. The ACC had their meetings this week as well. One of the topics was, kind of discussing what potential, playoff shares would look like, and whether that's going to be distributed equally. That's the same discussion that is also ongoing in the Pac-12 and others. So even internally, in terms of how this money is kind of routed around, I think there's some interesting discussions going on. And I mean, even going back to the home hosted model, you look at some of the contracts. You talk with some of the ADs. They might have an exclusivity deal with, say, a certain wireless carrier for signage around their stadium that, kind of has said, hey, we need this, exclusive to this venue. Well, what if there's a conflict with a CFP sponsor that has paid a whole heck of a lot of more money regarding some of that stuff? Are they going to be okay sitting a first round game out, or are they going to be covered up? Sometimes those conflicts are negotiated and kind of built into some of the models that do have home hosted conference title games, but some others there might be some sticky situations, and so I think there are a lot of details to be worked out. The biggest thing is really just the dates and trying to sort that out first, and I think that's the biggest thing: sites and dates, and then you can kind of work around some of the more minor issues, I guess you could say. But it's a lot. There's no shortage of things, and I'm sure there will be people that will be upset. But the bottom line is getting more teams involved in the college football playoff. This is what I wrote for Fox Sports this week. Would have made weekends like this past one just so much more fun, because it's if you're an Alabama game, that game stings, but you at least can have some solace in saying, what, we're still in the running. It's okay. We can survive this, and Tennessee. I mean, not only do you have the euphoria from beating a team like Alabama and ending a rivalry streak like they were on. But now you can say, hey, wait a minute, we're in the running now to possibly get one of these type of atmospheres back at Neyland in December to host some other playoff game now. So I think there's a lot more at stake, a lot more interest from a lot of schools. We mentioned Tulane earlier. I mean, they could be end up as the top, one of the top 6 champions and end up making the playoff now. Not only are they in the top 25 for the first time since '98, but they got a chance to make the playoff in a 12-team version. They have no shot now with a 4-teamer, of course.
No chance.
But you know what? There's a possibility down the road. So it does kind of change the calculus across FBS, and I'm going to be very curious to see what ultimately gets announced on Thursday.
Likewise, and I think to kind of put the bow on all this here, will people be mad? Yeah, like no shit. It's college football. Every administrative thing makes somebody mad.
You were just mad over fundraising for gold. I think that underscores what happens. Yeah.
Don't put it in the paper that I got mad. I have never been mad. Actually, I think it is funny. No, you're right. That will be part of it here. I for one will be glad once it's over. And then we can begin to game plan and game theory and think about how people respond to this new structure rather than kind of playing the will they, won't they, uncertainty world, which will be great. And I intend to, I apologize here for spending so much time on the college football playoff now. I will say, I think it's been kind of nice these first 7 weeks where I don't really feel like that's been the dominant force on broadcast coverage. Or really even the dominant force on a lot of like main ESPN or Fox or CBS coverage. I'm sure that will change over the coming weeks, but it's
going to change in 2 weeks. When
I'm sure it will, but maybe my memory is wrong. We have
I completely agree that the focus on the playoff this year, it's kind of been in the background. You hear it mentioned on a game day or a big noon. Here's my Final Four. Here's what I think it's going to look like, and those segments are always going to exist from start to finish in the season. But in terms of the constant drumbeat, especially during the broadcasts, you're not seeing the constant. Here's XYZ analyst Final Four. Here's XYZ play-by-plays. 4 champions like that. That does not kind of popping up as much as it used to. It did seem like a couple of years ago, especially that was just a constant drumbeat from the very beginning. You always hear, I was back out in Pac-12 territory. I mean, you look, they were like, oh, they've been eliminated. You're not hearing that same kind of conversation around a league like the Pac-12. Nowadays, part of it due to on-field reasons, sure, but a lot of it just in terms of that has not been the focus, and it has been nice. You're right.
Let us try to continue to embrace that and continue it for as long as we are able. I'm looking forward to watching some more actual games this weekend and talking about a couple more of those games with you here later this week. We've also done some other, I think, interesting things throughout the Ticker family here. If you are not a full Extra Point subscriber, you missed my story yesterday where I talked to a gentleman who designs mascots. He designed Harry the dog, Harry dog for University of Georgia. He's done mascots for Florida, for Delaware, for a couple of other mid-major places, and explained to me not just some of the logistics, like how much these things cost, how to make them not smell, what practical considerations, where you put the vents so people can breathe, but also like philosophically what makes a good mascot. Which I thought was a kind of nice in the weeds sort of story, which plays well with Extra Points. And we have a new HeadCoachU that Brian has put together, one of our sister publications. So I would also encourage you to take a look at as well. What else you got cooking in the hopper here for the end of the week?
A couple things going on. I'm writing on Fox Sports about the big UCLA Oregon game. Chip Kelly going back to Eugene for another time, but this time with a much better Bruins team. Got a few things going on in terms of our as you mentioned, the D1 Ticker universe, a lot of things happening for both December and January that we're going to be on site for. So getting a lot of things surrounding those kind of ironed out, but fun week in college football and fun week for us. I do encourage you, like you said, to check out HeadCoachU. Had Blake Anderson on from Utah State, the head coach there, and terrific conversation with him and Bronco and myself about mental health, especially, in terms of what everything that Blake has been dealing with. If you're not familiar with her story, please tune into that that episod, but
Yeah,
really
let's
how
not even
he
try to summarize it. Like, you need to hear that from Blake.
the guy, and he kind of wears it, and you can understand why, just all that he's been through. And I really feel for the guy, but he's putting a brave face on, and really allowing him to be not only a better man, but a better head coach as well, and dealing with his team, and dealing with people that are kind of 18 and to 23, and dealing with a whole host of issues that you probably wouldn't expect, and how you kind of go about that as a head coach. So a lot of interesting stuff on that. I have another guest booked for next week, so that'll be a fun one. But it's exciting times as we get that going off, and adding to the expanding D1 Ticker universe, as you like to say.
That's right, folks. You can find all of that within your own specific podcast feeds. You can find the rest of the video work we're doing at Collegiate Sports Connect, which is free. ExtraPointsMB.com is where you can find extra points. Some of those are free, some of those are not. But hopefully, if you're listening this far in the podcast, you're somebody that pays for the full thing. We will be back in touch with you very soon with some more stories across all of our platforms, and we'll catch up with you on Friday.